Well, hey, good morning, boys. It's the Halter Man here, as we say. It's a name I derived from Portland, Oregon, which is where I am videotaping from this morning. I'm going to actually preempt the James study for just one week because I actually wanted to kind of let you guys in on what I'm doing today. A few hours I'm going to speak at a church that I grew up in. It's actually my family church, and they asked me to come do some consulting and then speak to their folks today. And so I've pulled up in the car. I'm trying to stay warm, so if there's a little slight hum, it's because I'm trying not to freeze in this car. You'll notice from the windshield, it's typical Portland morning, very rainy, very bleak. I'm in a laundromat parking lot surrounded by a lot of Portland ruffians, so it could go bad. I might get a tap on the window from somebody needing some help, or might even get shot in the neck. I don't know. But anyway, wanted to bring you in on what we're doing. I had these kind of very unique thoughts all night last night about, when you go speak at your home church where you grew up in. This is like where it's a Nazarene church, and it was really one of the flagship churches in Portland. My family still pretty deeply involved. My dad's still a part of a reading group here. He's 86 or something like that. But the church went from many, many thousands of people down to about 300. And most of the folks are over 70. A couple of young pastors they hired a few years ago. And they just called and said, we knew you grew up in this church and we don't know what to do with it. Would you come out and try to give us some help? But I just wanted to kind of bring you in on this a little bit today because I'm finding myself a little emotional. That's not emotion. That's early morning stuff. So, but just thinking about that I've really have always been a missionary from this church. I never realized it till now. I'm going back. I'm going to stand on a stage of some men I used to listen to. One guy named Alan Rada, I remember he was preaching a sermon. I was in 5th grade and I was sneaking out of the Bible study Sunday school because I didn't want to do the art. And I was up in the balcony listening to him preach. And I responded. I actually walked all the way down and walked the aisle when he gave an invitation. And, I was thinking about all the things that have happened in my life because of the commitment I made to Jesus way back before I had any idea what it would mean. But I remember even in 5th grade, it was a very serious. I remember thinking this might change things, and I got to be a different person now. And but I learned to love the scriptures. It was this church that an old gentleman named Leland Purcell gave me. He gave me a really thick concordance because I memorized all the names of the books of the Bible, and he wrote a note in the back of it about how he believed that I would be a missionary for God and that my love for the scriptures would be what sustained me, and it really has. I mean, that I've kept that concordance with me forever. It's on my desk at home. I don't know if I'll even see Leland, but he might still be alive. It'd be amazing if I see him today. But and if I see him, I'm going to tell him what's happened in our lives because of his commitment to even teach 5th grade boys, the power of that. But I was thinking today, everything I'm doing is because somebody told me about the Lord. And it really does change things. Sometimes I think we lose hope that the gospel and the story of Jesus still does its work, but it really is a miracle. When you think about, I just think about my life all the time. It's like a freaking miracle that I'm not in jail or dead or living kind of a materialistic life, just trying to get stuff. Every single thing that's happened in our lives, from now how my kids live and what we're doing together in Alton, it's all because of Jesus and the story of the gospel, and it changed me. And I wanted to just stop and tell you guys that. I know I'm teaching Bible to you guys and trying to give a little light to the the smoldering embers that sometimes we feel like we are. But I want you to hear from me this morning. Like, I still love Jesus. I'm grateful to get to speak to this church. I feel like it's a privilege to think back upon, early church days, and the fact that other people were a part of this thing called the church, and they loved on my mom and my dad, and they believed, and then they passed that on to me. And the story of the movement that you've been a part of in the East Bay of the San Francisco area, Oakland, Danville, the surrounding areas, there's just an amazing story. It's almost like a chain of grace that you've been privileged to be a part of, and now we get to begin to pass things on. And I know that times have changed. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm here because this church is down to 300 people. Something of that change agent has stopped happening or doesn't show up as much. I actually, when I got off the plane, I drove through downtown Portland. Many of you have heard the stories of downtown Portland. It's carnage. Entire skyscrapers are boarded up because people literally don't want their employees to come downtown. So I just drove through all that stuff, and I got to the church that I grew up in. It was right in downtown Portland before it moved out to the suburbs where we're at this morning. But the First Church of the Nazarene is now a Unitarian church, and maybe I'll send this picture to you, but as I drove by it, there was one young boy sitting out on the steps, and he had his head down, his skateboard kind of at his side, but he just had his head down. And I took a picture of it. I'm going to show it this morning because it gives us a little story of what the church can become when we lose the thankfulness and the gratefulness of being a part of this chain of grace. Like, when we receive the Lord and it's great for us, and then we just go and live our normal lives focused on money or recreational time or whatever it is. And when we do that, when we lose the story, it really does hurt the world, and it leaves the world in a vacuum, and the vacuum's always going to be filled. I always say that when Jesus called us to make disciples, he wasn't doing it because disciple making was a new thing. Everybody was making disciples. The world makes disciples. So when we're not making disciples, when we're not passing on the beautiful story of the kingdom of heaven and asking our friends to consider it and to consider the Lord, and when we don't spend time with them teaching them about the ways of Jesus, there's going to be somebody else that's going to fill that vacuum, and they're going to teach them about materialism and about selfish living, and they're going to teach them about greed. They're going to teach them about how to get as much out of this world as you can before you cash it in. And so it doesn't matter how you treat women or how you treat your body or how you treat others. So the world is going to make disciples. Every one of us is making some type of or I guess we're reproducing our lives in somebody, okay? And I just want to draw you back this morning. I feel like as I'm gonna call this church that changed my life, to not give up on changing lives. Like, don't just leave kids out on the steps of a church without any hope. Don't just tell them that there's a million different ways to figure out God, like the Unitarian church would say. We really have to tell them about Jesus. Jesus is the only one that died for humanity. He's the only one that created the universe. He's the only one that holds the world together by his powerful word. And so it's worth us rethinking the recreational level by which we live out our faith. And it also, I think, really informs us that, like, there's some for sure's that we should always keep in mind when we're thinking about the story of the gospel and the privilege that we've had. And those for sure's are that we have to keep going. We can't stop. We can't look at what's going on in the world and just hope that somebody else steps into the gap. There's psychological studies that have been done on folks as they watch bad things happening on streets, that the first thing that they oftentimes do, almost always, you see some guy beating on a woman down, on Main Street, the very first thing most people do is to look around and see if anybody else is going to step in. That's just they have a name for it. I can't remember it right now, but That's not the gospel. Like, the gospel is that when we see the world struggling, we see a buddy in need, we don't wait and look around to see if somebody else. We have to go. It's a part of our nature. The biggest New Testament word is go. Go and make disciples. Make disciples may be hard. Hardest part is going to do it, because to go, you have to leave what you're doing. You got to stop. You got to let interruptions happen. And last night I called up an old buddy that he's like, the whole town of Portland knows this guy. He is a leader in the reconciliation movement. He's doing amazing things. But we sat down as it rained on us, because there's no restaurants open in Portland, just like where you guys are at. Tried to sit under this little awning to try to get out of the rain, but we had a drink together and a Philly cheesesteak, and we started talking about all the things we've been doing, and then it got really more on to us. I was like, how are you doing? How have you been doing for 20 years? How's it going with your marriage? How's it been? You're a good-looking guy. How have you managed to stay pure? And we talked about how things have changed in marriage, and how sex isn't like it used to be, and how there's a lot of temptations in our middle age to just kind of blow things off. And at the end, it was just really cool, because he had stayed clean, barely, as he said, barely. And I said, yeah, I know that story. But we just we locked arms. We prayed together with our eyes open over each other, that we would make it, and that we wouldn't just limp into the great beyond, but that we would stay men, and we would stay engaged, and we would stay pure, and we would keep going. That was really what because I asked him, like, why do you keep going? It's hard. He's working primarily in the inner city environment, and he said hardly anything works. For 40 years he's been down. I was like, but we just got to keep going. That's the essence of the hope, that maybe there is one young kid named Halter that hears a word of God and it changes his life, or we can lift the head up from maybe a young man that sees no hope. And so, guys, I know you're rallying together. You're mostly with men your own age. I remember that first retreat I spoke at with you guys, and watching Tyler honor the young men and honor the old men. And he pulled you guys together. He reminded you of the fact that this church is a generation of grace, and that you've continued the story. And I just want to encourage you this morning to really think about men around you, not just old men, but the young men specifically. They may not even be looking at the church. The church looks really bad to them, but they would look to you, and they would look to the hope that's in you. And I want you to consider inviting some young men into your group, and just like you did for the retreat. But let's extend the story, because we need it to keep going. We need the story to go. The world needs this thing. So let's keep going. Let's go the way Jesus would go. Let's not be program guys, or let's be people. Let's be real people that talk about real and raw stuff. I talk about all the sexual stuff with my son-in-laws. I talk about it with young men in my community. I don't hide anything of who I am, because I want them to grow up and be disciples of Jesus, and all those things matter. We talk about money, about how to spend it, how to save it, how to invest it, how to take a risk. We talk about women, how to honor women, how to help our wives live out their dreams. And then we talk about mission. We talk about the hard issues of the day, of what it means to really care for our brothers and sisters that are not white and that don't have the resources we have. And so, guys, there's a lot, but we have to go the way Jesus would go. We have to sit down and eat with friends, call them away from religion, and literally just like be normal guys. So if you are struggling yourself and you go, oh, well, I don't really want to do that yet, I don't have my act together, you've missed the entire point. The point is that you call men to you while you're struggling to let Jesus reframe your life. Okay, so don't wait to fix it. Be fixed together and invite these men with you. Make sure, we're what, 4 or 5 months into kind of the study together. This would be a good week to just really have a talk about, are we are we still glossing over the real issues? Are we just kind of answering the questions on the page? Or have you gotten to where you feel like, you're into the 80-90% of honesty with these guys? Hopefully someday you get to 100 where you just go, look, I feel like I can tell you guys anything. But this would be a good week. I'm going to ask you whether or not, or at what level of honesty you've been at to this point. And I hope that within, CPC and the other networks of men that you hang out with, that there would be, if there's anything that would be the mark on this men's ministry, it would be that it's honest and it's authentic, and you don't have to have your crap all, figured out to be a part of this thing. So yeah, guys, I just wanted to let you in on that today. I'm gonna ask this church to go. I'm gonna ask them to go the way of Jesus. I'm gonna ask them to be willing to leave the world behind, the things of the world, and to have the courage to move into the future and bless the next generation. So I wanted to throw that at you today. Sorry, I can't crack the Bible with you right now while I'm sitting in this car, but the entire text, maybe my proof text for this morning, if I was to put verses on the screen for you that speak to what I've talked about, it would be the entire Bible. It's the whole Bible speaks to a movement of men and women that pass something down to the next generation so that the goodness of God can be seen and experienced by normal people that struggle through life. That's the story of the gospel. So pray for your friends today. Pray for each other. Pray for young men. Pray for young women. Pray for your children today. And have a mindset and a hope and a faith and a belief that the story will continue through you guys. So love you, and it's too late to have you pray for my church this morning, but as you have been praying for me, I appreciate it, and I'll let you know how it goes today. So all right, guys, love you. Bye-bye.